And it's my privilege and honor the 45th Leadership Levers lectured by Preeti Vyas, the President and CEO of Amar Chitra Katha Private Limited. I'm sure, like I've written there, you'll have lots of lessons, especially from the point of view of reinventing an iconic brand like Amar Chitra Katha Private Limited, or just the Amar Chitra Katha itself. And before I invite him, as well as our co-host, Mr. Gaurav, let me also have the pleasure of setting the context. This is one of those sessions where we're going to, revisit the history and then see how we can recreate the history itself for the posterity or the generations to come. Because there are a lot of lessons, because somebody said, this company is something like a generational connect. And therefore, let me also have the pleasure of just give you context. I'm sure Preeti is going to talk more about it in her address to all of us. This, I believe, has started somewhere around 1966 or early 1967, when the founding couple, Anant Pai and his wife, Lalita Pai, have visited Delhi. And they were in a marketplace, and they were visiting a TV showroom where a quiz was being broadcasted. And what they saw was, the kids were answering all the questions spontaneously to a Greek mythology questions very positively. But when questions were asked about Indian mythology, even for simple questions, they were not able to answer. And that became the trigger for starting this beautiful and great company that they gave to the rest of the country as well as the rest of the world. And if you look at it, so, this company was started in 1967 by Mr. Anant Pai. And the first comic was published in 1970. And in 1980s, when the Tinkle was published. And the most interesting facet of this entire journey for me, and I'm sure Preeti is going to elaborate more on that, is in 2013, they have launched Amar Chitra Katha's app. You can imagine it is way beyond the kind of digital transformation, digital world that we are talking about in 2013 itself. And if you look at some of their numbers, they're even more interesting. Right now, they have 100 million plus pages read by paid users, and they have 500 plus comics published in 20 different languages. And they also have 100 million plus copies being sold, and lot many stories. And like I said, Preeti is going to tell us this beautiful journey and how she and her entire team is reinventing this iconic brand. And there are global parallels also, and it's not just about in India, but we are fortunate to hear that story from herself. And therefore, let me also have the pleasure of introducing both of them formally. Preeti Vyas. Preeti Vyas is the president and CEO of Amar Chitra Katha Private Limited, like I said, which is the publisher of iconic Amar Chitra Katha comics, Tinkle magazine, and National Geographic India. And she also is the founder of Fun OK Please Publishing, which creates contemporary Indian content for children. Throughout her 26-year-long career, she has been a retailer, publisher, editor, author, and an entrepreneur. Preeti is a seasoned bibliophile who believes the solution to any problem in life can be found within the pages of books somewhere. She believes passionately in the power of children's books to shape the future of India as well as the rest of the world. She is a practicing Buddhist and lives in Bombay with her wonderful and equally enthusiastic, I would say fantasy fiction enthusiast, Ms. Neil. And we also have the pleasure of having Gaurav Barjatia, who is going to be a co-host for today's evening session. And he's currently the head of branding and marketing solutions for TimesPro. And just about last week, he has got a beautiful award as 40 under 40 marketing awards in the country. And Gaurav is a seasoned marketing professional with a strong consumer understanding and business acumen. He owns extensive experience in strategic and tactical marketing to drive business outcomes. He's an alumnus of Ford School of Management, New Delhi, and he comes with a rich and varied experience of over 17 years at Idea Cellular, Parle Agro, Star India, and World Wrestling Entertainment. And he's a firm believer in constant learning. And he also has 2 executive certification from one and only Indian School of Business, as well as the world famous Columbia Business School. So we will have the pleasure of having both of them, and let's welcome both of them. Over to you, Preeti, first.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for that wonderful introduction to the company. And thank you for inviting me here. It's such an honor to be here. So as I always say after the introduction, that I am only the current CEO of Amar Chitra Katha. It's a 55-year-old company. So there have been many CEOs before me, and there will be many, many, many more after me. So the team and I, we are the current team that's running the company and trying to keep the flag flying high. I do have a small presentation to share, a small deck about our journey. But just quickly before we start, I thought I'll give a little bit of a background. So I think Dr. Chaudhary already told us about the company. The company was started in 1967. Our founder, Mr. Anand Pai, was a real visionary. I think in every generation, there is maybe one or two people who emerge like that, who have that kind of profound impact, on an entire society as such. And he was one of those legendary visionary founders who created this profound body of work. More than 400 comics of ACK were made in his lifetime. Plus, Tinkle was launched. So Tinkle we are now approaching the 800th issue of Tinkle. So a profound body of work, and the current team and I, our mission is, of course, to keep that legacy alive. So to all the work that he created in his lifetime, to keep that alive, to keep that active, but also to take the legacy forward. It's not enough to just live off what was created in the past, but to push the envelope forward, to take the legacy forward and to connect with a new generation of readers. We're very clear we don't want to be a nostalgia brand. Nostalgia is a sweet spot. Anybody who's in their 30s, 40s, 50s will instantly connect with Amar Chitra Katha at a very nostalgic level. But we are very clear that we are not a nostalgia brand. Nostalgia, perhaps, we are very happy. We love we very, very grateful for all the love we get from the nostalgia crowd, but our positioning, our target is clearly children. We create comics for the 8 to 12 age group, and we are very focused on that positioning because, and I am almost obsessive about it because I feel that if the current generation does not read and does not connect with ACK, and we are living only off 40 and 50-year-olds, then the brand story is over, right? It's only a few years before the brand story ends. So we have to keep this alive, and we have to keep connecting with whoever is the newest generation. And that's what we're trying to do. So let me get right into it and share a presentation. I will try to make it as short as possible and try to keep it as interesting as possible. Yeah, so just getting into it. So is the screen visible, Nandita? Is it okay? Yeah, all good?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. All right. So celebrating 55 years of Indian storytelling. Amar Chitra Katha, so that's the line that was coined by Uncle Pai. It's a route to your roots. That's him. That's a portrait of him. And Amar Chitra Katha, through its iconic comic books, has been the custodian of the nation's stories for over 55 years. For most Indian parents, Amar Chitra Katha is the most trusted, credible, and authentic source to acquaint their children with their Indian roots. Tinkle is now in its 42nd year, is India's beloved comic book brand, and the line that Uncle Pai had coined for Tinkle is where learning meets fun. So it's the most loved comic book across all ages. Our iconic characters, Supandi, Shambhu, Tantri the Mantri, all of you, I can see a lot of smiles because everybody remembers these characters, but we also have a lot of new characters. We have Wingstar, we have Ina, Meena, Maina, Mo, we have Reflective Detectives. These are all also extremely, extremely popular. So the important thing is that, as marketers, we straddle these two brands. There's Amar Chitra Katha, which is purely non-fiction, right? So the IP of Amar Chitra Katha actually doesn't belong to us in a sense. If you think about the story of Mahatma Gandhi or the story of Ramayana, it doesn't belong to us, right? It belongs to every Indian. It belongs to every person. It's an open source, open IP property. We don't own that IP, but we do have a very unique narrative style and iconic art style and the credibility that we hold on to. So that's Amar Chitra Katha. Tinkle, on the other hand, is purely fiction. Tinkle is completely, the IP is owned by us, and it's purely fiction characters. So there's two, from a marketing perspective and from a business perspective, they're two very, although it does sound like they're both comic books, they're actually two very different brands to deal with in their positioning, in their business models, all of that. So this is Amar Chitra Katha, more than 500 titles across 5 genres. We have epics and mythology, visionaries, brave hearts, literary classics, fables, and humor. We have published our books in all major languages, including major focus is Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Bengali, Tamil, Telugu, but of course we have Assamese and we have Punjabi, and now the latest one we are working on is Amar Chitra Katha in Urdu. So that's going to be really exciting because as you know, the Urdu script is written right to left. So the entire comic book, every panel has to be reimagined. It's a real creative challenge, but we are loving it. Also multiple foreign languages. So French, Spanish, Swahili, Mandarin, Thai, Vietnamese, Japanese. You can see some of the covers here. It's difficult sometimes to even make out which script it is, but they're circling around the world. These are the iconic characters. So Supandi, Shambhu, Tantri, you would know about. The DDs, Ina, Meena, Mainamo, Wingstar, these are our new characters. So even the older characters, like for example, Shambhu, if you grew up in the 80s, 90s, you'd know him as Shikari Shambhu. But it's a new avatar and he's not Shikari anymore because it's 2020, in 2022. Hunting is banned and you don't want to promote, killing animals. So he's only Shambhu. Shambhu has become a wildlife expert. He is a conservationist. He works with the wildlife authorities to actually catch hunters and poachers. He still shoots animals, but with a camera. And he's still cowardly. He's still lazy. He still loves to eat. He still tries to escape situations, but becomes the accidental hero. So that's Shambhu's evolution, from Shikari Shambhu to Shambhu the conservationist. Supandi also has had a makeover. We never use the word servant anymore. If you remember in the 80s, 90s, you will hear the word servant. We don't use that word at all. Supandi is now somebody who's trying a lot of different professions. So he's been in the comic books, he's been everything from a bus driver to a hairdresser to a software programmer to a chef, you name it, to a teacher. He has tried it all. In fact, our digital team is talking to LinkedIn to do a kind of collab with him because Supandi has had more than 350 jobs. So imagine what his CV looks like. Yeah. All right. So moving on. In the recent past, ACK has explored new approaches that are now yielding rich dividends through building a digital business, through new approaches to storytelling and design, new partnerships, tapping into new opportunities and new directions for growth and transformation. So just showing you some of the new work that we are doing, from stories of tribal regions to stories of women as the lead characters, ACK Juniors, which is a whole new collection aimed at younger children. We are doing a lot of new work on basically the ACK front itself. During Uncle Pai's time at ACK's peak, we used to be having, Doctor, you might remember, one new ACK every month used to be released, a new issue. Absolutely. That was a 32-page issue every month. So if you can do a rough calculation, it's roughly 400 pages a year, which was being created in those days. Last year alone, we have created more than 2,000 pages. So the pace of creation is more than ever before in our history. So again, coming back to the point of not being nostalgia, but as a content company, if you don't create content, the story is over, right? You need to keep creating new content. So the pace of creation last year alone across digital specials and print, we did 60 new books. We've done a lot of commission projects as well. So the Indian Navy commissioned us to do the naval journey of India. So it goes right from the time of Samudra Manthan to COVID and what role the Indian Navy has played in this entire journey. So a fabulous series. We've done the Godrej story. We've done Meher Bhai Tata, Women in Power. So when the Constituent Assembly was formed, there was 22 women in that Constituent Assembly who created the Indian Constitution. And this is the story of those 22 women. And like Doctor, I was telling you earlier, the book which we've done for I Am Kohikode is also on the screen called Globalizing Indian Thought.
I know.
Yeah. These are a lot of digital specials that have been made. So our entire approach is now different. We don't directly go to print. We actually release every new book digitally first. And then after a few months, it goes into print. Some of these are never printed as well. Some of these are new collections. So for example, if you look at Stories from the Northeast, which you see on the top right, it's not a new book. It's a collection of stories from assorted titles, but it has a new cover called where it's packaged very beautifully together. And it does very well. These packaged collections do extremely well on Amazon Kindle, for example, or on those, because the discoverability is very high. So you would not go around searching for that particular title. But when it comes to you in this kind of package, it becomes very interesting. So we do a Teacher's Day collection, a Doctor's Day collection, Punjab Day selection, those kind of things. And of course, there are a lot of new stories. The Last Days of the Mughal Empire is a new title altogether. Kanni Konna is a new title altogether. ACK Junior is something that we are doing, which is 3 levels of books, which are not comic book, but picture book. So it's a different format altogether. It's a picture book format aimed at a 3 to 6 age group. And it's a very exciting space to be in, because actually, if you think about it from a brand perspective, children start reading comics only at the age of 7 or 8, right? In India, children start reading at the age of 5. At the age of 5, you start with simple 2-3 letter words, and then you progress to sentences, and you reach comics by the time you're 7 or 8. But value building or narrating Indian stories is something that Indian parents and grandparents start doing at a much younger age, right? You start typically at even like at 3 or 4 years of age, you start telling those stories. So we realized there was a big gap that we had to fill. And that's what the ACK Junior does, which is looking at a younger age group and creating new readers for our comics book. By the time these kids turn 8, they can move on to ACK and Tinkle comic books. We've had some exciting co-publishing collaborations. We've done collaborations with HarperCollins, with Penguin, with Westland, with Rupa. These are non-comic book formats. So this is a long form, like you can say like a novelized format, which is chapter books. Again, a different age group and a different format. It doesn't compete with our existing format, but enables our stories to go much further. Enables us to occupy different places in the bookshop. Otherwise, in a bookshop, we're only there in the comic section. This enables our brand to be visible in multiple sections of a bookshop and also in multiple sections on a e-commerce platform, right? So otherwise, if you go to Amazon, you don't want to see Amar Chitra Katha only in the comic book space. So if you go to any of these other categories also, you will find our books. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of new characters, defective detectives. We have Ina, Meena, Maina, Mo. We have Wingstar, who is a 12-year-old superhero. She's a little girl, a school-going girl from a fictional town called Aizwa in the Northeast. And her name is Mapui, but her superhero name is Wingstar. And her dad creates a lot of gadgets which she gets to use, and it's a beautiful series. We have another series called the Yog Yodhas, who are which is based in yoga. The siblings Beer and Bala, who have these birthmarks on their body, which different animals. So different spirit animals. So for example, if they do the cobra pose in yoga, then that cobra's birthmark gets activated and that prani comes alive. So it's kind of supernatural, fantastic. The visuals are brilliant. And I'm so happy to share with you all that, we do these Tinkle Awards every year where readers vote for their favorite characters. So in last year's Tinkle Awards, Supandi was still number 1. He's the undisputed king of Tinkle. Everybody just loves him. So Supandi was still number 1, but number 2 was not Shambhu. Number 2 actually was the Defective Detectives. So the DDs and Wingstar took a higher position than even Tantri and Shambhu. So that shows our new characters growing in popularity. So this is, like I said, content creation at a never before pace. This is Tinkle. So we have, these are the special Tinkles. So very interesting strategy where we do, on the Tinkle app, we release a new issue every week. Okay, this is crazy. Never before in our history, or I don't know if any comic book creator is able to create at this pace, which is one new issue drops on the app every Friday. All that content, and then we have a monthly print, but the content in the print issue is different from the content in the digital issue. So they're totally different, so that the reader wants to read both. At the end of the year, whatever has not been printed, or digital only, goes into a special collection called Tinkle Gold, which is a collector's edition. So that's our, and then we of course do a holiday special as well. So 2 holiday specials and a Tinkle Gold, and of course a monthly issue and the weekly digital releases. So it's a content making factory. Our team is just insanely creative, as you can imagine. These were all the 12 issues of last year, just to show you the covers. From a marketing perspective, all of you would like to know that we celebrate, I wouldn't say we've created, of course, because they exist, the characters, but we have Supandi's birthday, we have Shambhu's birthday. So we have these, what we call signature campaigns. We have 5 signature campaigns in the year. We have a Supandi birthday, a Shambhu's birthday, we have an ACK day, a Tinkle day, and an Uncle Pi day. So these 5 days is where our marketing, activity, brand building gets, of course, the promotion part keeps happening, but brand building happens largely at these 5 signature campaigns. Resource allocation is significantly higher for these 5. We've done some lovely projects. Last year, we did a project with, I'd like to talk about this, with Google. So Google has a program called Be Internet Awesome around the world, which is talking about cyber safety for children, internet education for children, how to be safe online. And, I know it sounds a bit maybe like I'm showing off, but it's the way I like to say it is that all of us go to Google when we need something. But when Google wanted to make a program for India, they came to Tinkle, right? So we collaborated with Google and we made these 5 comics for them. There are characters talk about. So the first one is about, password, how to make a safe password. Then it's not falling for fake. It's about cyberbullying. It's about talking. It's about social media. Very relevant topics for today's children. We've made 5 comics and also animation for them. Yeah. Not just a publishing company, but a true content company. So like I mentioned, we have 3 apps. We have an ACK app, a Tinkle app, and an ACK Junior app. We've had more than, this number actually is an old deck, but the number has gone up. So we have close to 2 million total downloads. We have a really strong paid subscriber base as well. The average revenue per subscriber is very high. The number of times, the session time is really strong. It's 21 minutes that, average reading time on the app. And we can see that, 30% of our users are actually based out of India, which has enabled us to become a truly global content company. So up until the pandemic, so Dr. Chaudhary mentioned our apps were launched in 2013, and that's true. We were ahead of the game, but they were languishing. Like nothing much was happening. We didn't have much of a user base. So until Feb 2020, we had about 68,000 users across both the apps. And then we launched a campaign because the pandemic struck and we said, what can we do as a company? So just as it wasn't even a really well thought out marketing plan, it was just something to give to the kids that, okay, let's open up access to our apps and let kids read as much as they want, because they're all sitting at home. Everyone's bored. I'm a mom myself. We have so many parents in the company. So we said, let's just run a campaign that gives free access. Now the campaign went crazily viral, unexpectedly, as most viral campaigns are. You don't expect it, or you hope, but it catches you by surprise. So, Gaurav, you won't believe it. We went from 68,000 users in Feb 20 on 20th of Feb 2020 to by 25th of March, 27th of March, we had acquired close to 4 lakh new subscribers. Yeah, so it was just totally, it was like watching a cricket match score. My digital head would be sending us, WhatsApp updates. Preeti, today 25,000 new, now 30,000 new have been added today. They were logging in from all over, and the campaign kept circling back to me. People like writing and saying, is this for real? Is this a scam? So I knew it was really working. It was amazing to see that kind of connect and to digitally reach out. We were scared because what happens after the pandemic? Will we be able to hold on to those readers? And through a lot of amazing work by our digital team, we've actually been able to hold on to a paid subscriber base. So while the subscription amounts in India range from 1,000 to 3,000 between Tinkle and ACK for a year's subscription, the US customer pays up to 15,000 rupees. $149 is what they pay. So there is that kind of connect. Recently, we had a single largest transaction of $650, a single transaction. Somebody bought 10 subscriptions in bulk as a birthday return gift in the US. Yeah. So these are ways in which we are trying to also understand. We do a lot of workshops. Sometimes the workshops also happen at night for US time. And of course, we do a lot of them over here as well. I'm just going to talk about this slide for a little bit because it's very important to understand that as content creators, one is, of course, to earn money and have a strong EBITDA and have strong revenue numbers. But what is the purpose you exist, right? What is your purpose in life? Why are you here? We are here to tell stories. We are here. We want people to read our stories. So ultimate goal of a content creator, of a publisher is readership, right? If readership is there, then the money follows. But if your revenue is coming out of sponsorship or your revenue is coming out of, some kind of big brand collaborative deals, then it's a little bit scary because that's not sustainable. A readership revenue is a sustainable revenue because if I have 2 million users on my app, they don't disappear overnight. So it's very important to look at readership numbers. And while in print, In India, if you do 25,000, 30,000 copies of a book, in a children's space, it's a bestseller. It's a great number. So I give you the example of Mahadev, which you see on the screen. We have sold 20,000, 25,000 copies approximately in print, but on digital, we've had more than 2 lakh reads. Can you imagine the reach? The readership is insane, and this is not free. It's never been free. These are paid reads. So whatever numbers you're seeing are all paid reads, and that's the big game changer, that this kind of reach is possible through the digital platform. We are also number one, Kindle India's number one children's publisher. We put in all our content is available. Kindle has a really nice feature, which is a panel by panel loading for comics, making it a lot of fun to read. And of course, e-commerce, our books reach every pin code of India, are available through multiple platforms. We're also working with a print on demand model. Retail, of course, we look at, a lot of different bookshops across the country. So every tiny bookshop will have an Amar Chitra Katha collection, of course. We participate in all the major book fairs. We also do a lot of work for the Indian government and in different ministries, as you can see on this slide, Ministry of Ayush, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of External Affairs, all of them, we have made special books for them. Social impact, is something that we take very seriously. I think Amar Chitra Katha is, Dr. Chaudhary mentioned, generational impact, right? So it's a responsibility towards nation building. So whether it's a Swachh Bharat comic or it's something on educating girls about menstruation or drink driving or conservation of energy, we have used our pages to tell all these stories as well. We've done some amazing licensing deals. The biggest one is with Applause Entertainment, which we signed last year, and you're soon going to see ACK comics in animation on the big screen as well as the OTT platforms. So that's under production. That's happening. I told you about Google, and of course, a lot of other deals are also in the pipeline. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So some other interesting and big ticket collaborations have been with Conrega Karorpati. So we are part of the question bank. So very soon you will see, every so often you'll hear a question being asked by Mr. Bachchan, which is courtesy ACK. And a special highlight of the day for me is hearing Mr. Bachchan's voice say, "Aur ye drishya hame mila hai Amar Chitra Katha ke archive se." So I feel very happy whenever I hear him mention our name. We did an amazing partnership last year with Super Dancer, where there's a special episode on Amar Chitra Katha special where kids danced to specific stories. It was really beautiful. Yeah. Kidzania, Mumbai and Delhi, we have a permanent Tinkle animation studio, and we do a lot of activation and promotions there. And like I said, the most important thing for us is to endear ourselves to today's generation. So we do a lot of activities, a lot of promotions with schools. This is an ACK fest we did with Sridham School in Delhi, where we did a week of ACK and Tinkle celebrations, including a quiz and storytelling sessions and panel discussion. I did a story session myself, and there were 800 children on that call, on that Zoom call. It was a very, very amazing experience. A cosplay, so kids dressing up and narrating stories or sentences. It makes the parents happy, it makes the teachers happy, and it obviously makes us very happy as well. So what's happening in the future? We have an OTT section launching. We are looking at a lot of gaming. AR, VR content is happening. We are looking at, we've already launched micropayments and audio content. We are going to drop a Supandi NFT very soon on Supandi's birthday. That's coming up. And of course, various NFT options are there for Amar Chitra Katha as well. Bows, chariots, horses, all of that, in the metaverse. Every ACK character. So we look at, you were mentioning the Marvel universe, and in a sense, the Hindu universe is amazing. And we are just touching the tip of the iceberg. We've created it's a proprietary confidential software that we use internally. And this is just a screen grab from there where all the connections are made. Different gods, and it's not just a family tree. If you see the little legend on top, it's also boons, it's also curses, it's also vahans. All of that has been mapped out. This goes into 5 different levels. That's how deep the connections are. So whenever somebody asks us that, or do you have enough stories to tell? I'm like, that part we are sorted, we don't have a problem with finding content. There is enough content to last us 1,000 years. Yeah. And of course, lots of, there's live action feature length movies are also on the cards. We also work closely with the education sector. So our content is a part of ICSE, CBSE recommended books. Textbook publishers like Madhuban or TES but actually include pages from the comic books. If you're studying, for example, Ashoka, then 4 pages of the Ashoka comic actually appear in the textbook itself, which is a great way for kids to learn. So I always tell the team that, Uncle Pai, when he was trying to promote comics, he faced a lot of what we call headwinds, right? Because comics in those days was seen as something frivolous. It was time pass. It was like, padhai karo, uske baad mein you can read a comic. But 40 years, 50 years later, we realize now that all of us, including me, whatever I remember of Indian history and mythology is thanks to ACK, right? We all owe such a deep debt of gratitude to him for creating this. And now all of us are parents and all of us are teachers and educationists and principals. So now we have the tailwind. We don't have a headwind. We have a tailwind where we are welcomed with open arms, whichever school we go to, whichever publishers we go to. And the NEP 2020, the new education policy, also supports this kind of project-oriented, application-based, multidisciplinary education, where comics fit in beautifully. So as a company, we need to straddle both boats. One is entertainment and one is education. That's another place where we differ from Marvel, Dr. Chaudhary, that the education space is something which is very important for us to have a very vibrant and important presence in. Yeah. So this is education sector. We are trying to create a digital reading corner at every Indian airport. This is my personal dream, to have an Uncle Pai reading corner with our digital apps, Wi-Fi enabled. So whether you're a traveler who has, wanted to stop and read a Supandi joke, or you want your kid to read a short story, or you're a foreign traveler, and what better way to acquaint a foreign tourist with Indian culture and history than an ACK or a Tinkle, right? So you just stand there and read a little bit and you can carry on. So we're trying to build this across, starting with Mangalore Airport, which is the airport closest to Uncle Pai's birthplace. He was born in a place called Karkala, which is close to Mangalore. So the Uncle Pai reading corner will soon come up at Mangalore Airport. And then hopefully from there, we can go into every airport of India. That's where, and there's also a connection of Tinkle and travel, right? Everybody has train journeys where we used to read comics. And so the train journey has now also been replaced in a sense by flying. Everybody's flying. Today, my team is in Comic-Con Delhi, and they had to, they sent me the travel request. And I said, try and go by train. We have to save costs. And the difference between the Indigo flight and the train Rajdhani was 1,000 rupees only. So they all flew down naturally to save time. So the connection between Tinkle and travel, ACK and travel, is very strong. It's a deep bond. And I think being part of airports and flights helps us to, again, take that connection further. We also have the Amar Chitra Katha Foundation, which we launched last year on Uncle Pai Day, where we just try to help and do our bit in it's like our CSR wing, you can say. We've set up scholarships in his name, writing scholarships, reading scholarships. We give our app access free to a lot of NGOs, to a lot of rural towns, rural schools. We set up an Uncle Pai Memorial Library in his hometown on his birthday this year. The team is going out, painting walls, donating books, doing whatever we can to give back. We launched the Shambhu Corner at the Welfare for Stray Dogs in Mumbai. It's a permanent corner where, encouraging children to come and see the dogs there, maybe pick up for adoption. We contribute, we have a collaboration with Pedigree, so we give dog food over there. And we try to feature those little puppies in Tinkle magazine to, build awareness of them. So that's the Shambhu Corner picture that you see on top. Yeah. So the vision and purpose of our founder, Mr. Anand Pai, continues to guide us. Nothing gives us more satisfaction than enriching the social fabric of India by inspiring young minds to discover more and take pride in India's glorious past and exciting future. We remain inspired to keep creating transformational social impact as we step into a new era of storytelling and content generation grounded in India. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. I hope I didn't take up too much time.
Absolutely spot on, Preeti, and it's such a phenomenal journey, and said it in just about just under 30 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Very good. So I think before we take the questions from audience, I think we already have a lot of questions, and before that, let me invite Gaurav with this set of questions. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Doctor. So, Preeti, fantastic, overview. I think everybody knows what Amar Chitra Katha is, but to know about so much more from you straight, what the brand's been up to in so many years has been fantastic. We've got a lot of, people on the call today who are either from the field of marketing or are interested in the field of marketing. So I'm sure this is going to be a very useful discussion for them. And being from TimesPro, which is the higher edtech arm of the Times Group, absolutely loved what you guys have done with Shikari Shambhu, who's now become Shambhu after some sort of upskilling, social upskilling that was required. Yeah. And Bandhi, who himself has gone through multiple skilling and upskilling
continues.
Formats. Yeah, absolutely continues. So absolutely, love the fact of how the skilling and upskilling is inbuilt into the brand, at the core. I absolutely picked up the point where you said, and you spoke very passionately about how ACK is inbuilt or embedded in the cultural fabric of the country, right? I just want to understand from a marketing or a marketer perspective, what role does cultural understanding play in building a brand, or how important is it as a marketer to understand the cultural landscape before you start working on a brand or a marketing project?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most critical and crucial things, Gaurav, because if you don't understand the cultural landscape in which you are working and which you're operating, your conversation with and your relationship with your consumer will remain very superficial. It will be very transactional, it will be very superficial. So if you want to go even one level deeper into building a deeper connect with your consumer, then it's totally critical that you understand the cultural landscape in which they operate. Regardless of which product whether you're doing, for example, if you're in the food category, right? Now, Kellogg's came in and I love giving the Kellogg's example because Kellogg's has been a leader, right, in the breakfast category. But to come into an India where the cultural, we don't like a cold breakfast, we want a hot breakfast, right? And if you don't understand that, you cannot, it's going to be impossible for you to push through and try to change the eating habits of a 5,000-year-old, tradition. How do you do that? If you understand that, then you'll make masala oats and you'll be able to then, adapt yourself to the needs of your consumer.
Absolutely. Also, one of the things I picked up in one of your recent interviews where you spoke about Amar Chitra Katha, being a storyteller first. So, predominantly consumers see Amar Chitra Katha, Tinkle, etc. as, publishing output or as a publisher. But you spoke about how you have a vision of creating ACK as a storyteller brand before it is seen as a publisher. How does this change your efforts on the marketing side?
So at the core, what is our product? Our product is not the book. Our product is the story, right? That's the first starting point of it. So how the consumer chooses to consume that story is, I should be agnostic to that. Because my product, I should be able to ride every possible distribution network available. If there is a way to digitally stream content from my server to your brain, I should be able to do that as well, right? So we made that shift. And the shift is first mental. You have to make the shift inside your own mind that I am not a publisher of printed books. I'm a storyteller. And once you make that shift, then it's easy. Then the rest follows very simply. That, okay, if my consumer is reading on Amazon Kindle, what does a Kindle customer need? If my consumer is sitting in the US and reading on my digital app, what do I need that app to do? And how do I talk to that reader? How do I connect with that parent? In our case, it's also a typical problem of any kids product is that the consumer and the customer are two different people, right? So the customer is the parent who's spending the money. The consumer is the child who's reading it. So I need to be able to address both. Out of all the love and affection, the parent will buy a subscription or will buy a physical book. But if the content is not strong, the child is not going to consume it. So both need to happen. And I think once we became agnostic to the platform, a lot of different avenues started opening up to us. Whether it's animation, or it's going on live action, or it's audio, it's AR, VR, it's digital reading, and of course, it's still also the physical printed book. But we've now reached a stage where, you know, our revenues from non-print have crossed our revenues from print. So that's a huge jump for a legacy or a heritage brand like us to make. It's a huge jump.
Fantastic. My next question was about being relevant and making yourself re-relevant for the current audience. But I think you already answered that by saying that, how you guys have added a lot of heft on the non-print business, and now that's overtaken.
That's the distribution part, Gaurav, but the product itself also has changed. See, I can't expect a child who's watching Disney's Frozen and Avengers Endgame to then connect with something which was created in 1975, right? There's art sensibility has evolved. There is so much media stimulation in today's children's lives. I cannot expect them to connect with it. So our art has also evolved over time. 50 years back, they only had a watercolor palette and they had to just use their hand to paint whatever they could. But today we have Photoshop and we have all the possible illustrating tools available. So our art has evolved. Our narrative style has evolved. We don't use, the story arcs have become shorter. Today's reader has a much shorter attention span. All of us, our attention spans have become shorter because of the internet, right? And because of social media. So the story arcs have to become shorter. The stories have to become punchier. So the product itself undergoes an evolution to become relevant. And then, of course, distribution highway that you ride is a next step in that journey.
Got it. One more question. Now, since we spoke about Amar Chitra Katha, we spoke about Tinkle, and we spoke about all the characters. It just from a marketing perspective, for the all the learners on the call, why it'll be useful for them to understand or get your perspective on how each of these do you guys see as different or independent layer of the brand. I mean, how do you guys change your hats when you're thinking of Amar Chitra Katha as a marketer versus Tinkle as a marketer? And within the Tinkle universe, there are different characters who possibly deserve their own space under the sun today.
Right, so, absolutely. So that's a very nice, very good question, actually. So like I said, even though they're both comic book brands, they're actually very different. Amar Chitra Katha is all about, it's mostly non-fiction, right? It's retelling of either mythology or history. And Amar Chitra Katha sits in a slightly more reverential space, if I can say that. It's a revered brand. It's something that you respect deeply. You have a very deep kind of love for it. And there is a certain sacredness around that brand. And it has to be treated in that manner. So whether it's your social media language or the way you are, even your catalog, it has to look different. Tinkle, on the other hand, is total fun. Right? It's characters, it's madness, it's contemporary, So Tinkle has to have a very different language. Tinkle is much more lighter in that sense. It's much more fun. We can do a lot more. So for example, any Instagram, trend which is going on, Tinkle can do it very easily because Tinkle, it's fine for Supandi and Chambu and, Wingstar to go around doing mad things. On the Amar Chitra Katha front, we have to be a little more careful about how we ride that trend. Right? We can't use every audio which is trending. We can't use every meme. We have to be careful about how we do it. So the two are very different. And like you said, within Tinkle, again, each character has its own personality and has his own, style and has his own image and has her own following as well. Right? So for a very simple things, like even from business decisions, we never license out Tinkle. We always license out individual characters because each character deserves to have their own space in the sun and has enough to share. So licensing also is broken down character by character.
Got it. Okay. So let me not take more time. I'll just end our discussion with one curveball heading your way. Okay. Now you spoke about Amar Chitra Katha, all the characters, etc., which are built on culture and value. If you were to give one career advice or professional advice to all the learners who are on the call today, stemming from the ACK universe, what would that be?
I think whether it is the stories that we tell or the story of the company itself. Our company also has a crazy story of its own because it's 55 years old. It's changed ownership multiple times. It's had multiple management. We've gone through 2 wars. We've gone through a pandemic. We've gone through a fire which destroyed all the archives in the office in the early 90s. So this company has also gone through every imaginable calamity and crisis, but it is still standing, right? So what is the reason the company still exists, and what is the reason these comics still connect? I think the only one-word answer is the ability to innovate, right? To continuous innovation, to never stop learning, to never stop innovating, to never get into a space of arrogance. Ke, I'm Amar Chitra Katha, so there is no competition and I don't have to do anything. No matter how far or how good you are at your job or how far you are in your career, that learning should never ever stop. The minute you stop learning, you're dead, right? Your brand is dead, you are dead. That's the lesson that I would like to share.
All right, can't agree any more, coming from from the house of Times and TimesPro.
Exactly.
Should never stop. I think that's a fantastic message for all our learners. So I'll pass it back to Doctor. I'm sure there's a lot of questions from the learners today, and I'm sure they would want to hear from you as well.
Yes, I think we have a few questions from the learners and participants, Preeti. And the first question is from Mr. Amol Nigam. And this question is, in the age of lots of games on mobile, Xboxes and other platforms, and the trend of even kids getting into creating reels and doing online stuff, how is it that ACK is or will be creating a niche for the segment and brand itself? Thank you, Amol.
Thank you, Amol. That's a great question. And I agree that there is a lot of options available for children today, a lot of platforms to be on, a lot of things to try, and also a lot of anxiety amongst the parents and teachers on the excessive screen time use. And the example I always give is that think of the screen as a plate, as a thali, right? Now, it all depends on what you put on that plate, right? If you can choose to put a healthy, nutritious meal with vegetables and salad and ghee and rice on it, or you can fill it up with absolute junk, right? And you can fill it up with, either way, one of them is going to harm you, one of them is going to nourish you. Either way, you don't blame the plate, do you? Yeah, you don't blame the plate, you hold whatever is on it, which is responsible. The same way, the screen is going to be a part of our children's lives. That you can't change that. That screen is there. Now, what do you put on that screen? How do you make it nutritious? How do you make it nourishing? How do I give nourishing content? And that's where ACK comes in. So when a child is on the ACK app, on the tablet or on a laptop screen, the parent doesn't mind. If my child is reading Tinkle, I am completely at ease because I know it's completely safe, right, for the child.
Absolutely.
And the numbers show that 21 minutes average reading time shows that we are able to hold that reader's attention. Even in the midst of all these reels and everything else that's going on, the stories themselves are strong enough to hold the attention for 21 minutes. I don't know. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, hopefully. I think maybe behind that there is also parents' drive to to this one, right? It's because they also want to make sure that the children are connected to the roots. I think that's the first slide that you already said. The roots, getting connected to the roots. Now, this is a loaded question from Sanjay Shukla, by the way, and quite a big one.
Okay, I'm nervous now.
No, not at all. He says, as you said, that your team is currently targeting kids falling in 8 to 12 years bucket. But I think there's a very big market for old generation people here too. In my young age, when I used to visit village, the elderly people used to narrate folklores, which would not end even in 3 to 4 hours. All the night we used to listen to those folklores. Gradually, with the advent of modern age, all the stories got lost. If we can bring it back through your platform, I can tell you, even older people will happily become your customers. Besides, that too would appeal to kids for current age. So it's a question come, I think, a suggestion. So
in fact, we've just, thank you for saying that, because we have a bunch of books on folk tales which have been made in the last 1.5 to 2 years. We have a legend and lore. We have a book called Buying a Song and Other Stories. Buying a Song is a collection of folk tales from all over the country, from every state. There's folk tales from Kerala, from Goa, from Ladakh, from Gujarat, from Goa, from Punjab, from you name it. And each of those folk tales is, the art also is from that state itself. Wow. It's very, very beautiful. After that, we have launched a Siddhi folklore, Ahilari folklore. So we are even ones which are just oral traditions, tribal folklore. So Kannikonna was the entire tribal folklore collection where there's actually no written record of these stories. It's all oral tradition, which we have gone and actually spoken to tribal communities, tribal leaders, and got stories from them. And we've published them. So folktales is something we love doing them. They're very close to our heart, and please check out these books.
No, I think before I take the next question, I am very much tempted to ask this question. I think behind all that you have been showcasing very proudly and very passionately, Preeti, what is it like, your team of people who are, going that extra mile, walking that extra mile? Because I think that first of all, they have to create the story, in their eyes before they, share it with the rest of the world, right? So how passionate, what kind of team do you have it? And what kind of DNA are they made of?
So I think, like I said, grit, tenacity, innovation, creativity, passion, this is what defines the Amar Chitra Katha team. And we are very blessed because we have some industry legends, like we call the Maharathis, right, who are in the company. So I have been in the company for only 3.5 years. So I'm relatively a newbie. Ms. Reena Puri, who is the executive editor of Amar Chitra Katha, she's been with the company for over 30 years. She was hired by Mr. Pai and she was trained under him, and she continues to work with us to this date. Mr. Savio Mascarenas, who is our group art director, he has been in the company for 28 years, again hired by Mr. Pai, again trained under him. Gayatri Chandrasekharan, who is editor-in-chief of Tinkle. This is her second stint with the company, and she's come back as executive editor-in-chief at Tinkle. So these are people who have, so the craft of comic books, the craft of storytelling, the Amar Chitra Katha way, that science is passed down in a very systematic way. At the same time, I also have 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds for whom it is their first job. So I have the unique position of managing these teams, which are very diverse in experience, in outlook, in which part of phase of life they are in. Reena just became a grandmother 2 days back. So it's very different to manage, but it's what is common to all of us is that passion, is that love for the brand. I mean, we are all so, so grateful that we get to have this job, right? So that's common to all of us, all 100 of us.
I think I'm again tempted to say that this is, I think, probably one of the key pillars of making sure that you continue to reinvent the brand for ages.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
you have that, generational, different generation people working for the same purpose. Absolutely. I think that's very amazing.
And like I said at the start, I'm just the current CEO and she's a current executive editor and he's a current group art director, because there'll be a whole bunch of new people whom we are continuously grooming and training, right?
I think more than currency, I think you're providing all the currency there. That's what counts. I think we have two questions from Mr. Shamit Garg, Preeti. And his question is, hello, ma'am, I remember reading entire Mahabharat comics during my childhood, and it's great to see transformation. And his question is, are you also looking at animated films and movies creation? Is this not another opportunity for targeted consumers? Likewise, how about creating small animated rhymes for kids aged 1 to 5? And his next question is, follow-up question, Preeti, is if Amar Chitra Katha works with corporates in creating some brand animations and campaigns, etc. Thank you, Shamit.
Thank you so much, Shamit. We are very excited. Like I mentioned, we have signed a deal with Applause Entertainment, and you'll see animated versions, short series as long as features of our ACK universe coming out soon. There's a lot of things we have done which are already on YouTube. You can go and check those out. There are some things on our app which are in the animation space. We are looking at that very seriously. But like I said, we can do with a brand like ACK and its 55-year-old legacy and the credibility it enjoys, there's too many options. So for us, it's also narrowing down to what is it that we want to focus on. So we can tell brand stories. We can do corporate training and things like that as well using ACK. But I always ask the question that, are we the only ones who can do that? Anybody could do that, right? There's some excellent training companies that are doing that. But yes, creating comic books of Indian stories, nobody else can do it the way we do it. So let's focus on what is our strength and the responsibility we have towards Indian children and keeping India's storytelling tradition, culture, heritage alive. That is our responsibility, and we want to focus on that.
Thank you. And here's a question from Mr. Anand Jaiswal. His question is, hi, how did you market the hunter Shambhu to wildlife photographer Shambhu? I mean to ask, when some character is already having a symbol in reader's mind or in children in this case, then how did you change the symbol? Did it have an adverse or positive impact on the loyal reader's mind?
So the beauty of that is that when you're looking at a children's market, like I said, we're looking at a 8 to 12 on 8 to 14 segment, right? So if you look at a 4 or 5 years of the child's life is when we are a part of that child's life. Once a child turns 13 or 14, he's not reading our comics. He's not reading Tinkle anymore. So actually the transition had to be managed only for those 4 years. Because that reader then grows up, and for the new reader who comes along, that's how Shambhu is already, right?
Now, here's a question from Kaushik Vora, and his question is, good evening, Preeti. Any plans to introduce superhero like Marvel Studios does, and a sequel and a series?
So,
thank you, Kaushik.
As I mentioned, we have 2 character superheroes already. We have India's first superhero from the Northeast. Her name is Wingstar. She's extremely popular. We also have the Yogi Yodhas. We have the Super Weirdos. So these are all the characters that we have. You might not have heard of them because you probably don't read Tinkle today, right? But if you ask any child who's reading Tinkle today, they will definitely immediately tell you what those superheroes mean to them. And we're looking for the right partners. If any of you are interested in taking on a license to make a superhero show from any of Tinkle's characters, I'm really happy to take offers for that.
I'm sure there will be someone from the audience.
Yeah.
And this is a question from Mr. Janak Sethi, and it's fantastic views. And hi, I'm Janak from Gurgaon. May I understand what sort of social censoring you put at screening so as you avoid disputes or social conflicts, biasness, and finally ensure your brand image towards a healthy social fabric weaver?
That's a lovely question. So again, I have to answer it in 2 parts, the ACK part and the Tinkle part. The Tinkle part is easy. We have a brand white book, which clearly states what Tinkle can and cannot do, what topics. For example, Tinkle never talks about anything to do with religion, anything to do with politics. We stay away from those. We are totally about inclusion. So we are, in fact, Tinkle recently introduced its first character who's non-binary. Mm-hmm. So she goes with the name of they. That's the pronoun they use for themselves. So we are very particular about what are the different topics we want to talk about and what we will never talk about. Tinkle is a safe space. Tinkle is a friend to a child. So those values guide the Tinkle philosophy. On the Amar Chitra Katha side, we're talking of stories which are very, very dear to people's hearts, right? So for us, what we go back to is a very, very authentic, rigorous research and fact-checking process. Ramayana alone, there are more than 150 versions of Ramayana in India, right? But the version that we put out, parents are happy to share that, okay, this is the Amar Chitra Katha version. This is the ACK version I want to share with my child. So the kind of language, the kind of messaging, the kind of narrative style we will employ will be suitable for a child and will be something that we are ready to back up because we have done the research. And the research is not just going to Google and looking at 10 Google pages. No, it's actually going into libraries, looking at ancient texts, talking to a lot of experts. About 18 months of research goes into before we even get to the scripting stage. That's how intense the process is.
And today's last question for today evening, Preeti, with your permission, is from Divakar. And his question is, that's fantastic journey, ma'am. Could you share some of your experience in dealing with any customized requests from industry leaders to create some positive impact to their employees or students through Tinkle? Thank you, Divakar.
Yeah, so both Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle, we do customized projects. For example, we've told the Tata story. Tata story is used by them then as an induction tool. It is used, to talk about Tata values with their employees, with any stakeholders. On the Tinkle front, very recently, just in fact last month, we launched a book with an NGO based in Mumbai called Project Mumbai. Project Mumbai does work in multiple areas, whether it's cleaning up beaches or plastic recycling or supporting people with disabilities. All of that, they're doing amazing work. So we put out a book called Mumbai Gives, where they look at Mumbai being the kindness capital of India. And it's got 6 stories in it with all the work that Project Mumbai is doing. And those are the lovely, lovely stories of social impact, which we are sharing with the world under the Tinkle banner.
Thank you so much, Divakar, and rest of the participants who had the wonderful questions. And of course, I must also thank Gaurav for his thoughtful questions. I think it's a phenomenal that we could listen to the story from you. And I think I'm sure, like me, every participant must have had a phenomenal learning from the point of view of at least quite a few pillars as to that will go into making an iconic brand itself. And most importantly, of course, you may not like to use the word relevant, right? But I think that's what I think. How do you keep this kind of thing, especially from those stories which are very grounded in mythology, right? And the problem or the blessing or the problem of this kind of stories is definitely in terms of interpretations, where people. But I think that's not the case, like you rightly said. Anything that comes from the house of ACK, especially from the point of view of ACK, right? It's a very genuine version. I think people would love, and that actually is corroborated with 22 minutes of reading, I think on the digital platforms is very phenomenal. But I think from all of us, once again, thank you so much, Preeti, for sharing a lovely journey and phenomenal journey. I would say nothing less than, I would say, iconic by itself. And I think great takeaway from my side is, like I was talking to you sometime back, I think having, because I think, in many companies right now, one of the biggest corporate boardroom agenda is reverse mentoring. And when you have 22 to 23 years old people talking to people who have been there for the last 30 years, itself is a great sight to watch. I think one thought that we would like to leave out here is that we could ask Preeti is that, and I think some of the best companies they like Professor C.K. Prahlad talked about is co-creation. At some point of time, maybe just like you use the crowdsourcing kind of thing, maybe you would like to use customers also in terms of creating some stories or creating some great and phenomenal platforms. And of course, you have already extended invitation to some of them to be licensee of
on Tinkle, our stories have always been large part of our stories come from children. They come from the readers.
Very good.
Since the beginning. Tinkle, we continue that tradition. We have a Tinkle squad. We have an ACK council of children who are part of who give us reviews, who give us opinions, whom we send our scripts to. So they are very much part of the design process as well.
It's a phenomenal. I think it's a fantastic, and also I would say nothing less than soulful. I know that's what I want. I think more than anything else, these things continue to be generational connects. And I think in simple words, I think for generation to generation, I think Confucius said, Preeti, if you forget the history, you'll be condemned to repeat it. I think that's something that's what we do it. Or he himself said it that if you would divine the future, study the past. I think that's what we do it, because otherwise for us the history starts maybe with people who are just about 30 to 40 years old. But I think we have such an illustrious history, thousands of years of history.
And to add to that, Mr. Chaudhary, if you don't know where you're coming from, how will you know where you want to go, right?
Absolutely.
How will you know where you're headed?
Even worse.
Yeah. So be a global citizen by all means, but you need to keep your feet, keep your anchor in India. That's where you start from, right? That's
absolutely. Thank you so much from all of us once again, and look forward to hosting you for another interesting session on a very innovative theme. And I am sure by the time you'll have even more riveting stories from your side and from AKC.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And Dr. Chaudhary, I'd love to hear any feedback or comments even after the talk is over. If you could send it across to me on what people enjoy, I would love to read those.
Absolutely.
And as a sign off, I would request everyone who's here to please go and check out our new comics, both ACK and Tinkle. Go update your library. We are doing new work every single week. So please go and update your libraries.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.